We just do it very kind of flexible, informally. So, where's the second mic? Was the second mic somewhere? There it is. And it's on. Perfect. So you guys control this mic. Oh, wow. Okay. One more. And we in the audience and myself will ask some questions, and we'll have a discussion. So let me start then and ask. So what's left for mainnet, and how can people contribute to what's left? I think it's on.
Yeah. I alluded to this a bit in the earlier presentation. So what's left for mainnet? There's the security audit, which we think is important. It's actually kind of rare that a non-funded blockchain will be having a full security audit on the code that's there, but we think that's important to give us some assurance that there's no major issues in there. Never 100%, but you know it's worth going through the effort. The usability features like the wallet that I was talking about earlier, the kind of web wallet, a lot of bug fixes, a lot of testing, a lot of documentation, a lot of stuff that people can really get involved in, especially just helping us out by downloading Grin, trying to run it, reporting any bugs or issues that you come across. And yeah, that's basically where we are right now. Like I say, it's mostly feature complete, and that we had to draw a line in the sand somewhere and go, right, no more features. Benedict won't stop creating new things because we just can't keep up with you anymore. So yeah, that's where we are at the moment.
Cool. Yeah.
So I would like to know, once mainnet is released, are there planning to have hard forks? And if that, how we are going to signal through the community those hard forks to don't be a challenge or to be a fight in the community to signal those?
Yeah, well, that's the point of pre-announcing it, or having the fixed hard fork schedule. They're not supposed to be contentious hard forks. They're supposed to be fixes any mistakes we may have made, having an opportunity to fix them on a fixed schedule. And we're not trying to create like Grin Cache or anything on the first hard fork or anything like that. So
the first one.
Yeah, the first one. By the time we get to the third one, who knows? We'll probably have a big schism in the community. But no, that's what that's about. So we hope everyone will follow along, and you know, there shouldn't be any contention. If there is, I don't know. It's not coming from the development team anyhow. So.
There are some features that we do want to have in Grin, but we've just put them off for the mainnet launch. One such feature is support for relative time locks, which are crucial for implementing second layer solutions like Lightning. So we will start work on those once mainnet is underway. Of course, there are the changes to the hash function that I've mentioned before. Those will certainly be performed every 6 months. And there will be bug fixes and maybe parameters that need to be tuned. So we'll take the chance for those hard forks to do those in an elegant way without incurring any ugly code that has to deal with if block height before this, then do this, else do that. Actually, we do still need those. Yeah. No, I was thinking of another issue where we can just. Yeah. No, only in the case of a catastrophic failure would we actually be forced to relaunch. Another thing we need to do. This goes back to the previous question for before mainnet launch is we hopefully can get documentation better caught up with the actual implementation, and it would be helpful to have a nice specification of the core consensus rules, also to help for the auditors to check whether the implementation is actually doing the right thing.
Cool. Thanks for all the presentations. They were really awesome. So Grin is able to sidestep a lot of issues around like tainted outputs or linkability attacks because of cut-through. But is there a case where there's a node running in perpetuity, or there's an archival node that through running that is actually able to create linkages between transactions?
We do expect there will be archive nodes running, providing the service of providing historical blocks, even though the chain actually prunes away the distant history. Whether those services will be available for free, we don't know. We hope they will be available only at a charge to further increase the resistance for such analysis. Inherently, Grin is very fungible. There's almost nothing you can detect about all the data passing on the wire. It all looks like a lot of random data. And we still have like you said, if you do collect all the block data, you can see the transaction graph laid bare. But the transactions arriving at the mempools of the miners, they may already be subject to some pre-aggregation, partly courtesy of the Dandelion network, and partly due to other services propping up that provide mixing. There are protocols like Coin Shuffle that can help with this. So for people seeking further privacy, we do expect there will be additional methods beyond Dandelion that can give further aggregation and obscure the transaction network.
Yep, but it's not perfect.
No, certainly not.
And I'm sure Igno's kind of jumping up and down from SSH, but he's not connected, so he can't really answer. But he did write up some notes on privacy just recently, which is on our wiki. It is possible to send, if you're like a motivated actor, you can send continuously to one person transactions and start monitoring where those outputs are going in order to start getting some degree of insight. It's certainly something we can improve and look to improve after minute release, but it's very fungible, as John said, still. Yes. I think it's something on privacy it's called, or something like that. Thoughts on privacy.
If we launch mainnet and if something went wrong, how we will know that something went wrong? Because we encrypt all amount. If somebody can find a bag and can print money, how we will know? Do we have some tricks or it's impossible?
If a bad actor can find such holes, let's say like a bug in the bulletproof code, then we can only hope that some good guy will also find the bug. Maybe, and in the case that they find it later, we hope that the identification of the bug also allows for a method to detect if we can repair the possible abuse. If not, if you cannot certify that there has been no inflation due to exploitation of a bulletproof bug, then you would also be forced to relaunch.
Hi. Is there one of the proofs of work that lends itself better to pooling the work? For example, is the lean ASIC implementation better if you start off with an edge on many different machines in parallel, rather than, what parameter would you change on the pool?
For pool ability, I used to think that the fact that proof attempts on Cuckoo Cycle take so long make it less suitable for pooling, because to measure somebody's contribution they need to be able to provide shares of lower difficulty, and if the overall difficulty stays very low because it's simply too hard to come up with solutions, so very few solutions are found in the first place, then it would also be very, very difficult to produce enough shares to be able to measure somebody's contribution. But I think with the setting of Kakaru 29, we know that it will still be quite quite a high solution rate. You can still solve that with more than 5 graphs per second on an individual GPU. So with the expected number of GPU cards mining Grin, which I think will be in the hundreds of thousands, there will certainly be a high enough rate for measuring hash pooling contributions. It could be a big challenge though on the ASIC friendly side, where we might need 20 seconds per attempt. That's not going to leave any room for lower difficulty shares.
So it does lend itself better to one than the other, effectively.
Yes, because of the inherent, the large size would force you to lean mine, which is factor of 4 slower, and thus, in a sense, provide factor 4 more difficulty for measuring pool contributions.
Hey, I feel all the questions are going to John here. I was wondering regarding the Cockatoo cycle here. Seems like the goal of it is to encourage ASIC design and new ASICs essentially. Is there an inherent benefit to choosing this cycle in terms of, I don't know, usability or whatever?
Like I explained, the change from Kaku to Cockatoo was to sidestep the possible optimizations of counting up to 3. One thing I didn't mention there is that to properly update the Kaku node counters, you might also need support for atomic operations, because you have many threads operating in parallel, some trying to update some counter from 0 to 1, and multiple threads trying to update it from 0 to 1 or from 1 to 2. And if you lose one of those updates due to lack of atomicity of your counter updates, then you would also be missing out on solutions. And that complexity is also avoided with Cockatoo, because it has single bit updates. There is no need for atomics. A bit starts out 0, even if multiple processors try to set the bit to 1, you can be guaranteed that the bit will finally be in state 1. So just in that way, there's actually two ways that Cockatoo simplifies ASIC design. You don't have to optimize the space usage by packing threads together in a number of bits, and you can avoid the use of atomics.
I was wondering why you chose the 1 minute block generation.
That's a good question. Why did we choose that? I mean, my personal opinion on that is if you've ever tried to use Bitcoin with your 10-minute blocks, it can be a while before something is verified. Whereas if you have a 1 minute block, it makes the chain a lot more usable from a usability perspective. I mean, that's only my take on it. But I think Andrew Poster used to argue for us taking on longer block times for some cryptographic mathy reason. I have no idea. So, like John might know a bit more about the history of that as well, or not.
The reason for longer block times is to minimize the orphan rate. We know that Ethereum has a much shorter block time of only 15 seconds. Actually, they started out aiming for 12 seconds. But they do have additional mechanisms to cope with the orphans, namely incorporating so-called uncles in the chain structure and also giving partial reward for them. We didn't want that extra complexity, so we couldn't really go below 1 minute. But we think the orphan rate with 1 minute would be acceptable still, and a good trade-off for having increased confirmation.
Right.
So in that regard, we consider Bitcoin to have been overly conservative. And 1 minute is a nice round number. Yeah, we used to have a blockchain reward, a block reward of 50 grins, and I thought 50 per 60 seconds. That's quite optimal. 1 per second. That sounds much nicer. And we see that again in other parts where we changed, for instance, the maturity for new coins. Used to be 1,000 blocks, but since we're going with this nice round time periods, we thought let's increase it to 1,440 blocks. Makes it a day. When people ask when will I be able to spend my new coins, we can say in a day, rather than in so many blocks. Yes. Nice round numbers. That's what Grin goes for.
I just want to make a quick comment on the 1 minute block time. I think Monero started out with 1 minute block time, and then they just switched to 2 minutes after like 2 years or something. I have no idea why, but yeah, apparently they thought it was a good idea to switch after.
They would apparently be in a good position to tell us why not to to pick 1 minute. But time has not stood still. I mean, that was like several years ago, and technology does keep advancing. So maybe these days 1 minute is more acceptable technologically than back then.
Okay, first of all, thank you. Just one question from the community. Do we get the chance to mine the first block? Or can you explain once you start the mainnet, if we get the possibility to mine the first block, or how you planning on mining the first few blocks?
The Genesis block.
We're actually thinking of doing a mini. Yeah, we're actually thinking of doing like a mini ICO, as in we're only going to sell grins from the Genesis block for collecting purposes. That was kind of a fundraising idea that we've been talking about. Right now, all of the test nets, the Genesis block it's been valid, but it hasn't been validated. And you know, someone has to go off and run their machine and find the solution for the first block to make that happen. So I'm still not quite sure how we're going to handle that. We'll see.
If it isn't clear, we could really use some money.
Yeah,
funding.
exactly.
We did have the idea to make sure that hashing does not get off to a very quick start. It doesn't look good to have blocks appearing within seconds after launch. So we want to set the initial difficulty really, really high. And if we're not going to have any special rules for treating Genesis differently, then that means we're also going to have a really hard time to find proof of work for Genesis. There are ways of letting people getting help to find a proof of work for the Genesis block without people also being able to find successive blocks on top. That's a bit too technical to explain, but it basically comes down to you only need the SIP hash keys for finding the proof of work. And if you don't know all the details about Coinbase transactions within possibly multiple Coinbase transactions within Genesis, you might not be able to compute the correct Merkle roots for the next block. So in that way we could seek help in finding a proof of work for Genesis. But that still has to be crystallized, and also possibly including the hash of a special message like was done with Bitcoin. We, I think, do see ways of getting a hash of a special message in there that proves that it didn't start before a certain date. But when we get closer to mainnet, we'll have more discussion on this topic.
Let me ask a question. As part of my weekly newsletter on Grin News, you should check it out. I see a lot of interest from investors and venture capitalists, just looking from the emails of people signing up. There seems to be a lot of interest. What are your thoughts about how these firms and investors could get more involved in the project or support the project in some way or form now, and even further down the road when mainnet launches and so on? What would your suggestion to them be to how to help out, basically?
Give us money. That would be my no. Look, one of the things about Grin is the core development team. The core development team and everyone's kind of working on it don't really stand to gain anything from the launch beyond kind of the satisfaction of having done it. I mean, I've done my own campaigns. I've received money from some VCs to keep working on Grin. It's basically the same rate I'd be getting contracting anywhere else where I live. There was a thread, Catherine Nicholson at Block Cypher. You may have seen the mail she sent to the mailing list a while ago that ended in hashtag don't be a dick. And it was addressed to all of the anyone setting up mining farms, anyone who are kind of trying to invest in infrastructure to mine in Grin, but not necessarily contributing to its development. It's really, if you're in any way interested in Grin or have some notions of investing in it, future kind of infrastructure, believe in the project, then it's really important that we kind of get some support as well, because really, no, there's no immediate return. We can't offer you an ICO. We can't offer you anything in particular. But what we can offer is the assurance that we'll all have the funds to give Grin the attention it needs to be able to pay for any future development, and it really benefits everybody, especially if you're investing in ASIC design or putting together rigs to mine. So that's very important, I think.
Any more questions? Yeah, over there.
Two questions. I think the two interesting facts that Grin running is using this community-driven fundraising. How does that work for you guys? Does that it's actually quite slow, right? Like even raise like 16 Bitcoin takes so long. So how do you guys feel right now that like funding methods works for you guys? Does that actually have some point maybe stopped because no people like donating? And second is about how you guys make decisions among the small team right now. It's kind of like an initiative of the governance model. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Well, on the first point, it's challenging. It was the first campaign I run for my own funding was it was December 2017. Everyone was euphoric and throwing money around like there was loads, never-ending supply. So my first campaign was filled in about 30 seconds, and that was great for them. But unfortunately, I mean, there was 6 months worth of funding in there when the campaign ended, and a month later there was like 4 months, and then so I had to kind of call it and say, look, I'm going to cash this out to make sure I actually have the money to work with. So it's challenging. Since then, we're kind of in a bear market, which I think is good for launching Grin because it means you can do it with a little bit less pressure. But there's not that exuberance out there. So it's been a bit harder to get capital out of people. That being said, I think we have a really good community, and on all of our funding efforts so far or mine anyhow, have worked and come to fruition. Our current funding that we're looking for the security audit, we're about a third of the way there, which it's going to take a little longer to get to the goal, but it's definitely it's promising. It will happen. It's just a matter of when. The second question about governance and the model and how we decide things. Again, we have our governance structure that we have in place, where we have a technocratic council, which is made up of a few people who've contributed to the project, and will be the ones making decisions on where to spend the funds and the general direction. And I have to point out that this is not an exclusive club. Anyone can join, and look to say about open source. It's not a big democracy on the council. We're going to listen to every single opinion. We're going to listen to well thought out, reasoned opinions, but we obviously can't have an open vote for everything that goes on. So you do need to put some structure around it. But one of the principles that we're working with now is anyone can join the project and get involved to the point where they'll be welcomed into the council. Everyone has an equal opportunity to get involved. So.
And just to add some color to the first question, I mean, alternative funding models, yes, you can raise money, but it does come at a price as well, in the sense that I think a lot of the reason why we have a very strong community is because we take a different view on how to launch the coin than maybe what's been happening in the past. And many people have said to me as well that it feels like a kind of a fresh wind in the space to look at a fair mining launch, and I think it attracts a certain type of people to work on the project. I wouldn't have been here myself if it wasn't for this decision, and I think many others as well. So I kind of see it almost as a benefit as well.
I would just I think our community, crypto community, should encourage the teams like funding in this way. That's how I think a project or team should have kind of like a funding kind of status to try to make things work out. That's really could push things forward. That's how entrepreneurship or like things that really work established. So based on this, I like to personally donate to Bitcoin for this project, and personally,
Very good, thank you.
I will make transaction today, and I will try to communicate, and provide some maybe developer volunteer to help with the security, because I know a bunch of teams. We have some investment made there. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Also, I'll also add a comment. That's great, and I think it's also important if you're going to be a privacy coin, looking to reach kind of mass adoption, that you're not having a lot of centralized corporate structures with corporate interests driving the main development of the coin, because it becomes very hard, I think, to reach wider mass adoption. I think it's been one of Bitcoin's reasons for success as well, that it's becomes, I mean, you can argue about centralization versus decentralization, but for sure having like a one central entity that really governs a coin is not ideal, especially not when it comes to privacy preserving efforts. All right, I think that's it. Thank you very much, all of you, and to all the live streamers. Thanks to all the speakers. And if you haven't and you want to get involved, check out grintech.org. Get on Gitter, get on GitHub. We'd love to see you guys get involved.